All right, welcome back, folks. We took a little short break there. We're going to get right back in to the holiday tournaments. We're going to start with Medina. Max is going to go over the teams, the individuals, and the weights, and I'll chime in as I can. But Max is a resident expert in this area. He knows a lot more about the D1, D3, the total statewide scene than I do. I'm more of a Northeast Ohio guy. It's all yours, Max.
All right. Looks like in terms of a team race, probably you got to say Perry is the favorite. St. Edwards is there, and then you've got Detroit Central Catholic, which is always a powerhouse in Michigan. I think they were the state champs the last few years, big school state champs. And we're looking at 106. Probably the top wrestler could be Zach McCauley. This kid wrestling for Perry, he just made the cut from 113 down to 106. It's interesting. Perry has had such a deep team the last few years. You know, state champs last year, and you saw a couple kids like Tommy Jeniton, state finals last year, finally got to crack the lineup as a senior. Jake Newhouse, he
Yeah.
finally cracks the lineup last year, makes the state finals, upsets Assad, and McCauley is kind of in that same vein. He finally gets to crack the Perry lineup, and you know he'll be contending for a title here. Last week he actually finished fifth at the Beast of the East, which is one of the best tournaments in the country uh, year year round.
Yeah, it's got to be top five overall
Yeah,
tournament wise.
definitely in Delaware. Can never figure out why some of these tournaments pop up in like Delaware or Fargo, but
Yeah.
he actually beat a really good Ohio wrestler in the fifth and sixth place final, a state qualifier from Talmadge named Terrell Grant. Actually beat him pretty bad. It was 17-6. Kind of
Yeah.
surprising that it was that lopsided, but it's possible McCauley is just he's a 13 pounder.
Yeah. Well, you know, Perry's, like you said, they're so deep. They have state place potential kids on their bench that can't even break the lineup, and then they're uh, you mentioned him, the 106 from last year,
Yeah, Jeniton.
Jeniton. Yeah. He won. He got the chance to wrestle in Top Gun. I think 2 years ago when he was a backup, and he placed high, and he wasn't even the starter for Perry. So Dave Riggs does his job well down there in Perry. I have the utmost respect for that man.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple other guys you could see at this weight are you might see Randolph from Wadsworth. He actually got bumped up to 113 last year as a state alternate because Bauman was state champ at 106 as a freshman. Or Randolph was a freshman. Bauman was a sophomore, but he's going sixth this year. But he's been out for a couple weeks. Hopefully, he's back in for the tournament. And a couple other guys. I don't know if they're getting down to weight yet or not, but you might see a kid from Oak Harbor, Bruce, and I know I'm going to butcher the name, but it's Hrensu. He was a state alternate out of the Northwest last year. You might see a kid from St. Ed. You might see Casimir here. He was a middle school state finalist last year. He was actually a state champ, middle school state champ the year before. And then you might see Shane Johnston from Tuslaw at this weight.
Yeah.
A couple time D3 state placer, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, at least twice.
Yeah. And then 113 is one of the best weights, at least in terms of the top competition. You might see Devian Edwards from Lorraine, who was third in the state last year. Boro fan had him down at six, and he knows the weights better than I do. So
Yeah.
if that kid goes down to six, it could be a real good matchup between him and McCauley. Otherwise, you could see him thrown into the mix. Who you have at the top is Noah Bauman, who was state champ for Wadsworth. Alan Hart, who was seventh in the state last year in D1, and he actually finished fifth ahead of Bauman at the Ironman tournament just like a week ago. Had some really nice wins, and he'll be right in contention. A lot of people thought he might drop to six, but it looks like with Casimir there and with his Hart as well as Hart been wrestling, he might just stay there at 113. And then you've got the freshman phenom Jaden Maddox. This kid was a three-time middle school state champ. He just placed third at the Ironman tournament
Right.
a couple weeks ago. Lost to the Blair kid Zach Sherman in the early rounds, and then came back through. I think he won like 7 or 8 consecutive consolation matches, and that's at like probably the best in-season tournament in the country. And just great wins left and right. He had some really big wins too. Knocked off some state placers along the way. Everyone was kind of hoping to see Maddox and Bauman this last week at Hoover, but Bauman was up at 120, so hopefully we'll get to see that matchup at Medina this week.
They're both D1 Ohio wrestlers, right?
Yeah, definitely. So it could be a preview of the state finals. You could see Maddox, you could see Bauman, even Hart. He could be either one of those guys. I'm not saying he will, but I never underestimate the Eds kids in terms of how well they're gonna develop by the end of the year. And then 120, it doesn't look as top heavy, but it just looks like it's really like a crazy dense weight class. You might have like 4 or 5 state placers back at that weight, and it looks like we could have 3 state finalists. You could have Tyler Warner from
Claymont.
Yeah, Claymont. Kid's a 2-time defending state champ. He's up at 120 this year. Jake Newhouse, just fresh off of a finals appearance at the Beast of the East, real nice tournament. I think he knocked off Tyshawn White in the semis, who was 3rd in the PA state tournament last year, and he was Newhouse, of course, was a Ohio State finalist last year. Upset Assad and before losing to Mackle in the finals. And then you could see a couple other guys there. Seth Beard from Napoleon might be there. He was 3rd, I think, last year. And I think he was a state finalist the year before. And then you could see guys like Garrett Lambert might be there. Might see Mike Stewart, state qualifier. Jawan Minifield from Perkins. A lot of tough wrestlers at that.
Yeah, those names that you just mentioned, I've heard their names, and they've been around for a while. Yeah.
And then just in terms of kind of the northeast districts, you could see Luke Weimer from St. V's. Is he going to be at?
Oh yeah, he's going to be at 120. I did talk to a St. V coach last night, and he did tell me to watch out for the Weimer kid. That he's underrated. He's a freshman, and that as soon as he gets acclimated to the St. V way of wrestling, that he's going to do something. So yeah, Weimer's a kid to watch.
Yeah, definitely someone to watch out for. I think he was 5th at the middle school state tournament last year, and he one of those under the radar guys that with all the state qualifiers, all the quality at this weight, sometimes guys like that kind of get overlooked. But definitely somebody you don't want to overlook if you're actually wrestling the kid.
Yeah, I can remember a couple years ago when Andy Dobbin for CVCA was a freshman, and he got, he came out of nowhere, and I can't remember who he upset, but he ended up placing real high in that tournament at Medina, and it was wow. It can happen.
Yeah, definitely. These days it seems more and more like freshmen come in and they're just ready like right off the bat. With all the training. Some of them start in like when they're 5 years old. So if you overlook these freshmen, you do it at your own peril.
Yeah.
And another guy from St. V's that kind of an under the radar guy, but still really good, is at 126.
Yeah, John Chell.
Yeah, Chell was he a state alternate a couple years ago?
Yeah, he was. And then he came back last year. I can't remember if he got hurt, but I know that he was out and missed a lot of time. I think he tried to come back for the state series, but I don't think he. I can't. I'm drawing a blank on it, to tell you the truth. But I know that he came back, and I thought he was coming back at 113, and maybe he didn't. I did just look over the Alliance District, and I didn't see his name there.
No, I think he missed sectionals.
Yeah.
But another tough kid for St. V's that'll be around this weight.
Yeah.
At 126, probably the premier matchup would likely be, you got Jose Rodriguez from Massillon Perry. He was 2nd last year, and he was state champ the year before. And then you got LJ Bentley from St. Ed's, who was 4th in the state. These kids both already have D1 scholarships. Bentley going to Pitt, I think. Rodriguez going to Ohio State next year.
Oh, wow.
So could see a real good matchup there. You might see Shakur Laney. I know Pickerington North picked up a couple of really good transfers, but with the transfer rules, they might be out until January. So
Yeah.
he might be out. Chandler Menard, who's like a three-time state placer for Pickerington this year, he might be out, until January. Hopefully they're in the lineup, but once again, I'm not really sure of the transfer rules. 132, another tough weight. You might see like 5 or 6 state placers at this weight. Another St. V's kid, Carter.
Yeah, Carter, St. V's. I think this is the week that they're going to try to drop their lineup and get them to their alpha weights, or where they're probably going to wrestle the rest of the year. I've heard that that's their intention. Whether it happens or not, we'll have to wait till weigh-ins. But I think Carter and Coons are going to drop weight, so Carter should be at 32.
Yeah, couple times state placer. I think he was 7th the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think 7th. He's a low placer.
And then you got Mecklenburg from Lutheran West,
Yeah.
Shrestha from Liberty Benton's a couple times state placer, Josh Heil, Brunswick,
Yeah,
a couple times state placer, Jason Spencer from Perry.
Spencer's having a pretty good start to the year too. Did he place at Ironman? I think he did.
I don't know if he placed. I know he had like a winning record, and I
Yeah.
mean that anytime you do that at Ironman,
Yeah.
I think he did the same thing at the Beast. He might have won like 3 or 4 matches, been like 3 or 4-2.
Right.
So it's like that's the type of competition you want to get early in the season, kind of test yourself. And
So it
see
doesn't
where you're
sound
at.
like there's a 132 that's head and shoulders above the rest.
No, that's a good point. I guess you'd consider Heil the favorite just
Yeah,
because he's
I think so. Other names.
yeah, because he's a couple time. He's another one like Spencer. Wasn't too far off from placing at Ironman, but with all those names in there of state placers, it's anybody's tournament. 138. There's kind of some question marks there. If Carter drops down, you got Nick Steed. He used to wrestle for Glen Oak, now wrestling for Perry. He's been wrestling 45 all year. There's been some reports that he makes the cut to 38 at some point, but I don't know if that's here. And then there's a kid from Brunswick, Nick Cusis, I think is his name.
Oh yeah, Cusis or
Yeah.
If we pronounce them wrong, folks, we're doing our best.
But he was a state finalist last year for Brunswick as a freshman.
Yeah, he came out of nowhere pretty much. I had heard of him. I followed the results, but I didn't have him as being a state finalist.
No, never would have guessed that, and he certainly proved a lot of the prognosticators wrong. Pretty impressive run. He was a middle school state champ, actually beat Corey Shy from LaSalle in the finals, and Shy kind of got all the acclaim coming in because he was like a Fargo All-American, but then Cusis was the one that made the finals, so really deserves a lot of credit for such a great work. That was a good weight class too, 132 last year. You got guys like Whiteley, Ward, Smith, Boggs, a lot of guys with state experience, and he still made the finals.
Wow.
And then 145, it looks like if Steed is up there, the matchup might be you got him, you might have Tanner Miller from Lancaster, who is a state placer at that weight, and you might have Chance Marthy from Tuslaw at that weight.
Marthy's tough.
Yeah. He might be at 52, though. I'm not sure. I've kind of seen him at different weights throughout the year. You got other tough guys. Beaver Locals at this tournament, so you could see Daniel Hassan at that weight.
Is he at 45 right now?
Yeah. He started at 52, and I know he cut to 45, and I think he won the Hopple tournament. I don't remember the exact result, but...
Yeah, he's tough. Hassan.
Yeah, definitely dangerous kid too. Puts a lot of people on their backs, gets a lot of pins.
Right.
So he'll definitely be somebody to watch out for at that weight class. 152 is kind of interesting because there's one kid, Ben Peterson from Oak Harbor, who's a state placer returning, and then you got a ton of like youth and kids that were kind of like fringe state qualifiers last year, just missed out. You got Joey Bauman from Wadsworth, who was a middle school state finalist. David Heath from St. V's, who's a middle school state finalist. And then you've got also Victor Marcelli, another tough freshman from Massillon Jackson. And then you got kids like Zach Steiner, I think from like Norwayne maybe.
Yeah, that sounds right. There's Steiners from out in the Wayne Athletic Conference, I know, and I'm pretty sure Norwayne.
Yeah, and then you got a couple other state qualifiers like Ryan Kaminsky out of Green,
Yeah.
Zach Dufresne out of Medina at this weight, and then lots of other guys definitely capable of placing. But 152 looks like it could be anybody's tournament. Kind of a good weight if you're one of those kids looking for state placement. Kind of prove where you're at this point in the season. Separate yourself from the pack with a win. So definitely be a fun one to watch. As will 160, and that also looks pretty wide open. I see like maybe 5 guys who are a match away from state at this class. You got 2 kids, Tyler McCafferty from Pickerington North, and Ben is it Knaus from St. V's, both state qualifiers. And then you got a bunch of kids who are a match away. You got Garrett Poling from Massillon Jackson, Jimmy Thompson from Lancaster, Bryce Locklear, Olmsted, Goldsmith from Westerville North, and then you might have Williamson. It's kind of hard with some of the Ed's kids because they just want a state football title.
Yeah.
So it's just shows you the crazy amount of talent that they have at that school.
Yeah.
But you don't know. This might be the first tournament that we see some of those football players kind of actually.
I heard that their O'Malley, their heavyweight, I think is supposed to be back, and they do get affected earlier in the year because of their football success. And St. Ed's has been a surprising team to me this year. They weren't. In the off season, it was supposed to be a really big down year for them, but they looked really good at Ironman without some of these big name, their football players.
Yeah, that's a good point. And just guys like Hart placing high, and that's one of the things that those teams that are good year in and year out know how to train their kids.
Yeah.
So when you have a room as deep as theirs, I think that between coaching and just kind of all that competition, I think just breeds more success.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of like a next man up thing,
Yeah.
But that's a good point. Yeah, St. Ed's is definitely, like, some people thought they might be a year away from kind of battling with Perry or Brecksville for a state title, but you're right. It might be this year. They might win Medina. They might still be able to contend for a state title.
Yeah.
170 is a pretty interesting weight because you've got a couple of state qualifiers back, but you also have some kind of new names, interesting kids to watch for. One of those is James Handwork from Lutheran West.
Yeah, I've heard the name.
Yeah, I think he was a middle school state champ a couple years ago. Yeah. I think he placed at Ironman wrestling for the Lutheran West. Maybe like a low play, 7th, 8th, something like that. Still real impressive for a sophomore. But you got a couple of state qualifiers back. Shane Mast from Wadsworth, who's kind of been out, I think, with injury.
Yeah, football injury.
Yeah. Hopefully he's back, but you just can't tell until you actually see him on the mat. Clayton Ray is another kid, might be out. I think he's wrestling for Central Crossing, but he was from, I think, Hamilton last year, so, transfer rules. He might still be out for this tournament.
Yeah, I think that January 1st, I think, is half the season is what they say. If you transfer, you have to sit half the season. Now, where they make up half the season, I don't know if it's a date or if it's half of their matches.
Yeah. Good point. So, yeah, you're probably right. All these guys who transfer are probably still out until, like, the next tournament after the new year. And another guy to watch out for is Austin Phillips, state qualifier from Perry. He just finished, I think, 7th at the Beast of the East this last week. Once again, anytime you place at Ironman or Beast of the East, you definitely deserve a lot of credit. You're beating state qualifiers, state placers from, all over the country at that point. So definitely a fun weight to watch. And then 182, you could see a really good finals matchup. Colin Moore, probably there from Norway, that's right. State finalist the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Really, really good kid. Up from like 160 last year. Yeah. He actually finished second at the Super 32 before the season, and that's like the premier preseason tournament before all the actual tournaments start. And he's going to Ohio State next year. I think he's like a top 8 national ranking by some of the services like Flow and stuff like that. And he could wrestle against Tim Knippel.
For Wadsworth.
Yeah, and he was state placer last year.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was a placer last year.
Yeah, I think he might have finished like 5th at 170, so you could see that as a finals matchup. You also might see a kid like Nate Hall from Olentangy, state qualifier or state placer last year. but I think he's still kind of getting his wrestling legs under him. Olentangy is another one of those teams like St. Ed's, deep playoff run in football, so kind of takes a while to get back into the rhythm.
Yeah. Colin Moore, I know, if I'm not mistaken, he only has one loss in the last, in each of the last 2 seasons. He in the state finals, I'm pretty sure he got beat both years.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
And let's see, there was something I wanted to say. Knipple just won, or he just beat Zach Lehman from Revere in a dual meet, who I think
Big win.
Lehman was I'm not positive exactly where he placed last year, but he may have been runner-up. I'm not sure, but he's D2.
Yeah, I think he was actually like one of those few guys. It's always cool to see. I think he lost in the first round to Lane Thomas from Graham, and then he came all the way back for third.
Okay.
So that's always cool to see when you see a guy lose. I always hated that old style that they did at the state tournament where you had to wait and see if your guy got through.
Yeah.
But yeah, he lost his first match, came all the way back through, had some really nice wins. Beat Audie, who was won his district.
Yeah.
Beat Russell Miller from Trace. Beat I think Eisnicker from Big Walnut. So yeah, real tough kid.
Yeah, and that was a major decision win. I think
Really?
10 to 2.
Yeah, well that's a big win, and I'm sure Knipple will be looking for the state finals berth this year, as will Moore, finally getting over the hump, and I think he will, just because it seems like he just keeps getting better every year. But real tough. He lost to Austin Reese last year, who I think is wrestling for OU right now. But I think it's going to be hard for anybody to beat Moore. In D3 this year. 195. It looks like you could see a kid who used to wrestle in D2 for Sandusky. He's now in D1. Isaiah Margheim.
Yeah, Margheim. He's the kid who did real well at Ironman, right?
Yeah. I think he might have been maybe like fourth or something, like fourth, fifth, third, somewhere in that vicinity. He was runner-up a couple years ago to one of the Lexington kids, Leonard, I think, at 195. There's kind of some controversy in one of his early matches, but he made it through. Gave Leonard a pretty decent match. I think it was like 6-1, and then he had kind of a rough state tournament last year. Didn't place, but now he's wrestling for Lorraine, and he looks like he could be a state finalist again. And he might see Kyle Schaefer from Northwestern.
Yeah. West Salem, Northwestern, I think it is.
Yeah, definitely. And he's a couple times state placer, maybe like 5th and 6th, 5th and 5th, something like that. So aside from him, you can see a lot of tough kids. Woolheater might be here from Tuslaw, state qualifier. Nick Kramer, I think it was a Central District champ last year, state qualifier.
Lexington.
And Lexington is here. Or is Lexington here? I know they used to be, but
I don't know. Well, when you said Kramer, I thought that might be. Where's Kramer from?
He is from Westerville, North.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you're right. I don't remember if Lexington's here because they had that Faust. Faust won this tournament
Bailey
last year.
Faust.
Yeah, and Margheim actually beat him a couple times, which was kind of surprising. But yeah, if Lexington's here, Faust is definitely one to watch for. And 220, it looks like a pretty interesting weight. You got Cheney from Perkins, Cordell Cheney, a couple times state placer. I think he was like 7th and 6th the last couple years. I think he split 2 matches with Brumley at the state tournament last year.
Yeah.
And you got Parker Knapp from St. Ed's, also a state placer at this weight. Probably good matchup to watch for. And then heavyweight looks like a really good weight class, actually. Oh, actually,
Brumley.
Yeah, Brumley. Go ahead.
Yeah, I looked for Brumley to drop down. You did say he did split with Cheney at Columbus last year, losing in the first round and then beating him for 7th and 8th. I'm pretty sure that's the way it went.
Definitely.
But yeah, the word that I get is the reason why he didn't wrestle last week is he couldn't alpha at 220 until Sunday. So instead of having him wrestle heavyweight, they kept him out and let some other kids get some experience. So I don't know who else is there, but Brumley, from what I heard, wrestled a couple tough kids in exhibition matches last weekend and looked really tough. So
yeah, and he won the district last year.
Yeah, he beat Rutherford.
Yeah, and that was kind of
Norton.
a big upset at the time. Like I didn't even know he was going to drop to 220.
Yeah, and he was huge.
Must have been. Yeah.
Yeah, he was huge. That match is on our archives, I'm sure. But yeah, that was a heck of a match. You know, Rutherford being a returning third. Well, Brumley was a heavyweight placer the year before.
Yeah, seventh, I think.
Yeah, yeah. But then Rutherford pinned him down in Columbus last year. But that Rutherford isn't going to be in this tournament. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Rutherford seems to pin everybody, but Brumley still had it for him.
Yeah.
Last year, I think Rutherford actually he was another one who lost his first match at state.
Yeah.
Pinned 5 straight kids to take third.
Yeah,
I've never heard of that happening before in my life.
Yeah.
5 straight pins. But yeah, Brumley will contend both at this tournament, for a district title and for a state title probably.
Yeah, they're both Rutherford when he comes back. Brumley, both of them coming out of Alliance.
Yeah.
I know there's some other tough kids around the state though, because I do look at Bucksman and Burrowfence rankings, and Burrowfence has Rutherford number 1, but for the longest time he had another kid. The name is escaping me right now, but
yeah, I think you got Caldwell from Jonathan
it.
Alder, who was
Yeah.
a state champ last year.
Yeah.
At that weight, but that was one of those weights where it's like, if you mix the weight class up and do it another weekend, you might have another champ.
Yeah.
A lot of even guys, a lot of pins and interesting matchups. Right. But the last weight, 285, looks like you could see a lot of, even without Brumley, if he's making the cut to 220. You got Evan Lohman from Sheridan, who I think was fifth. He was 5th in the D2 state tournament last year. Gage Archer was district champ, Westerville North D1. Chris Crum, another Olentangy wrestler who was probably on the football team. He was a state qualifier, just made his return and finished second at Hoover, I think, last weekend. To Cameron Teacher, another kid, Central Crossing, who won that tournament. He'll be at this weight class too. I think he pinned Archer actually earlier in the year, maybe at another tournament.
Right.
But yeah, that looks like a really good weight class. And then you said the Ed's kid might be coming back this
O'Malley.
year. Yeah, O'Malley, another tough one. I think he was their starter at like 95 last year until he got hurt or something like that. Yeah. And then his backup was the state alternate, which shows you, how
the
deep
depth they have in that room.
Yeah. But I think he's probably going to be like a light heavyweight if he's, if he was 95 last year.
Yeah.
So it'll probably be pretty mobile, maybe not as big as some of the other guys, but still somebody to watch out for.
Yeah,
right off the bat.
I'm anxious to see Ed's see what they might come out with a full lineup.
Yeah, definitely. And then the one other kid to watch at this weight would probably be Matt Carrick out of Maslin Perry. They're the Mailer was their starter last year, I think, state qualifier. This kid comes in this year, and he just placed 4th in his, a lot like looking at McCauley or talking about Newhouse and Jennington last year. You know, these guys just come right into the lineup. He was 4th at the Beast of the East last week, which is pretty impressive for somebody just cracking.
Do you know his
lineup.
grade?
I think he might be a junior. He's either a sophomore or junior, I'm pretty sure. They had 2 pretty good heavyweights. Gregory.
Gregory.
They had 2 kids, pretty tough, but they're, I don't think either one can make it to 220. So
Right.
So it looks like Carrick will be the guy to watch for Perry at this weight. Well, that's pretty much it for the individual lineups. I'm not really sure how the Detroit Central Catholic team will break down. I'm pretty sure that Amines might have graduated last year. Those kids were both, I think, like state champion caliber wrestlers. They had, I think Garcia might have been in their lineup last year. I think he's at Cornell right now, but I assume they're still going to be tough. But I'm guessing that it's probably going to be a contest between Eds and Perry for the title. Perry being the favorite at this point with the defending champs, but you're still going to get tough teams like Wadsworth. Probably a top 5 team.
Yeah. Well, not knowing what Detroit has, Central Catholic has, or I think it's Detroit Catholic Central. Actually.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I'd say Perry Perry after third at the Beast. Uh, St. Ed's, they're impressive, and they're going to get better as the year goes on. Uh, and what was the other team you mentioned there?
Oh, Wadsworth.
Yeah, Wadsworth always tough. The last team, well, Perry and Wadsworth both dethroned or beat St. Ed's recently, and I can't think of any other team that's going to be there that has the numbers to beat those three.
Yeah, you see a lot of good teams with some good individuals. St. V's might be they might win at Alliance, almost at Firestone, at Alliance this year, but they'll be tough. Probably not going to hang with Ed's, but or Perry, but could definitely be right up there in the mix.
Well, I think at Medina they do have a small and big school. They have an overall champion, then they have a D1, and then a D2, 3 combined, I think it is. So, yeah, I agree, St. V's. Lexington, if Lexington is there, I know they usually are, but I don't have a team list in front of me. But they have a decent team.
Yeah, I think Casper is their 82-pounder. He was a state qualifier, maybe district champ, and we were talking about Faust a little bit.
Yeah.
Seems like they always got good big men.
Right.
I think Temple was their heavyweight last year. He was a state placer. He's coming back, I think. So, yeah, definitely one to watch for if they're at this district.
Okay, well that's gonna wind up Medina. I think I don't know what time it is. It's 8:45. Okay, well we're all right. We're gonna go ahead and go right into Brecksville. This will be our last tournament we're gonna look at. Brecksville is they say the longest running Christmas holiday tournament. It's in the state or in the nation?
I think they say in the nation.
That's
I'm
what
not sure how they.
I did see a little controversy on Yappy about it, because it's the 54th annual Brecksville tournament and the 55th annual North Canton Holiday tournament. But I think that what it is this is in between Christmas and New Year's, and North Canton is always the week before Christmas.
Okay.
So I think that that's where it comes in. But Brecksville is definitely, in my opinion, this year the toughest of these three tournaments. Year in and year out, Medina and Brecksville, they interchange, depending on who's there in state qualifiers. But Brecksville this year, I think, has it.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like you see some interesting mix of teams here. You have Brecksville, who's nationally ranked. Delta is actually nationally ranked as a D3 school. And then Dayton Christian is supposed to be right there with Delta in terms of, contending for a D3 state title. Those are probably the big teams to watch for. You got other good teams like Detroit Central Catholic will be there. Toledo Central Catholic, our Central Catholic.
Yeah.
And then you have good teams like Edison's a good D3 team. Yeah. Canfield's kind of a sneaky, good D2 team. Yeah. It seems like it's young and getting better. Oregon Clay will be there. Illyria's real tough. Lake. Uniontown Lake's actually there. They used to be at Medina all the time.
So Lake's going to be there.
Yeah, so they're making the jump over to here. At 6, it looks like the guy to beat is Drew Matten, who was third in the state last year for Delta as a freshman. He was second at Ironman to the top-ranked kid in the country. Real good. Beat Donathan from Mason in an early season dual meet, who was a state placer. And then you got a couple other kids. Josh Venia from Toledo Central Catholic, who was third in the state last year. And then you might see Hunter Costco at this weight from
Northwest.
From
Now, Northwest used to be at Medina, so they made a jump over.
Yeah, they made the jump too.
And St. V's was at Brecksville last year, so
yeah,
a little team switching or switching tournaments here, but get some different competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, Costco's tough. Didn't he wrestled? Didn't he wrestle 13 last week at Hoover?
Yeah, he did. So I don't know if he's going to try to make the cut to 6 again, or if, you're right. He might still be at 13. Either way, he's probably like a top 3 type of guy. You'll be gunning for a title at either weight. Do you remember how he finished at Hoover?
Second.
To Maddox, right?
I knew. Yeah, Maddox. But it was a bad loss. I mean, point wise.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Maddox
you're
must
right.
be really tough.
Oh yeah, kid's
Now he's the freshman, right?
yeah,
Maddox?
freshman for Catholics or Central Crossing
Okay.
out of the Central District. But and another kid to watch at 106 would be Matt Cardello from Canfield.
Right.
He was a middle school state champ last year, and now wrestling for the Canfield team. I watched him wrestle last week in the Graham duel, and he actually wrestled Justin Stickley from Graham, who was sixth in the state last year. Costco actually beat him for fifth and sixth, but Cardello hung right with him. He lost 1-0. That's about as tight a margin as you can get. And I mean, that's the kind of competition you want to get if you're an excellent freshman. Those are the kind of guys you got to face. Got to go through. 113, you might see Costco there. Tommy Hoskins, another middle school state finalist from Dayton Christian. He actually beat Noah Bauman from Wadsworth, state champ at the Ironman a couple weeks ago. I think he lost to McCulley from Perry and then came back through and beat Bauman. It was a big upset, like 4-0.
Wow.
You could see Braunstrup from Brecksville there, state placer, his fifth last year. Joey Bowen from Manchester, a couple times state placer in D3. And you might see Greg Quinn from Shadyside. I think he was a D3 state placer last year. Another tough kid to keep an eye on. 120 looks like it could be one of the better weights at the tournament, but there's a lot of, you never know with these holiday tournaments, like what weights guys are going to go. They might, like you said, like St. V is trying to make the cut down.
Right.
Or you might see kids that, too much holiday food, they're going to go up a weight class. So it's like...
And I think that the coaches, even, see, Christmas is Thursday. They're wrestling on Saturday and Sunday, I think, at Brecksville, right? So the coaches probably have to send their lineups in before the holidays. So, if a kid might have a question, if they send a lineup in and the kid doesn't make weight, then he doesn't wrestle, and the team's going to not have a kid at that weight. So.
Yeah, so sometimes you'll see a whole team just bump their lineup a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, at 20 you could see Jake Spees from Delta. He was state champ a couple years ago. Was undefeated until the state semis last year, and then he got upset. Kid locked up a cradle and hit a roll through cradle on him. Only loss of the year. But you could see Devin Schroeder from Michigan State champ a couple years ago. There's a couple Michigan teams here. Davison is here. And I'm trying to remember the name of there's another, I think it's like Grand Rapids Catholic Central.
Okay, I don't know, but I know Davison is tough.
Yeah,
so.
Davison's always tough. The other team, another tough team. I think Schroeder was a state champ in Michigan last year. You might see Mario Guillen at this weight from Perrysburg.
Yeah, a tough kid.
Yeah, he actually wrestled 26 at Ironman, which is a little bit of a surprise because some people thought he might cut to 13, but...
Wow.
I'm guessing he's going 20.
He was a 13 last year, if I'm not mistaken. But I saw him all year wrestling at 20, and then he made the cut. So that might be what he does this year.
Yeah. So we'll see where he goes for this tournament. You got Michael May, Dayton Christian, state placer. Jared Brezovec from Aurora. He's been wrestling 26, though, right?
Yeah, he has been.
How did he do? He wrestled at Hudson this last week, didn't he?
Yeah. Now a lot of people had him the favorite, but I think he was a low placer.
I think you're right. I think he lost to Hannon from
for Falls.
Yeah, Cuyahoga Falls. Tough kid.
Yeah.
But that was a bit of an upset. So we'll see how that breaks down. 126, another interesting weight. Got Austin Assad, freestyle national champ this summer. Second at the Beast, third at Ironman. He was a state finalist last year. Evan Cheek from Edison, I think a couple times state placer. And then you got another guy to keep an eye on, Giorgio Poulos from Canfield. Fresh off a big upset this week in the dual meet with Graham. Goes in, beats Eli Seipel, who was like a top 10 ranked kid in the country. Yeah. Beats him in overtime. Real exciting match to watch.
Did you see the match?
I did, yeah. He actually got the only takedown. It was really close. He got the only takedown. Seipel got a reversal, and he was really close to back points, but it's one of those ones where it's like You might get the call, you might not get the call.
Right.
He didn't get the call. Poulos got to his base, got a late escape, and then got into kind of a funky scramble situation in overtime. Was able to ride for his 30 seconds, escaped like late, maybe like 5-7 seconds left. Wins the match, big match. He looks like a big 26 too. Poulos does.
Yeah.
He started the season at 32.
Yeah,
so we'll see how he does with guys like Assad and Cheek. You might see Guillen there. You might see his brother, Moises, at that weight. So definitely one to watch. You got other state placers like Petrus from Padua might be there at that weight. And then at 32 is another one. It might be the best. 32 and 38 might be the best weights in the tournament. And that's not a surprise. As soon as the National Wrestling Association cut the extra middleweight, now you always have a logjam with these middleweights, it seems like. But you got John Furness from Olentangy Liberty. He placed at Super 32. He's a state placer the last 2 years. Corey Shy from LaSalle could be here.
Yeah.
Fifth as a freshman.
He's up to that 32 now?
Yeah.
He was at 20 or 19 last year.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely gotten bigger. I think he actually tried to cut to 26 in the off season, but he's just, with younger guys, they sometimes don't just grow like that. Yeah. And you might see a kid, one of the Davison kids, Lincoln Olson, who is a couple times state champ, maybe 3 times actually at this point.
Wow.
He's an Oklahoma State recruit at this point, but he had never lost a high school match until he came to Brecksville. I think his sophomore year, he lost to Aaron Assad from Brecksville. I think he took it to him too.
Well, that Assad is now Austin is one that's wrestling now.
Yeah.
Aaron's older brother. Where's he going to college?
He's at Purdue now, I think.
Okay, he a national caliber wrestler there.
Yeah, definitely. But Olson is a tough kid, so that should be a great 3-man race up at the top. 138 is probably my favorite weight because you got like Richie Skreptalk, state champ. You got Nate Hagen, state champ. Those guys seem like, I think Hagen actually beat Skreptalk 4 times last year and beat him at the beginning of this year. But Skreptalk did beat him at Super 32 earlier. And then you got David Carr from Dayton Christian. Kid's a freshman. I think he was a state champ in Kentucky last year as an 8th grader.
Yeah, I do remember getting a transfer. Now we've covered Skreptalk before. He's an Oregon Clay kid, right?
Yeah.
A couple years ago, we did some duels at CBCA with Skreptalk there.
On our site.
Yeah, they're on the site in the archive. Yeah. And he wrestled CBCA. That was when they had a loaded team, and Skreptalk wrestled. I don't think it was Tomasello, but Tomasello was on the team at that time, I'm pretty sure. So.
Yeah. And then another Michigan guy you might have here, Nate Lemix, another state champ, just to throw into that already crazy lineup. He's a nationally ranked guy. Throw him in with Skreptalk, Hagen, and Carr, and you got a great weight class. D'Amico's there from Brecksville, state placer. Martini from Delta, state placer, great weight class. 145, it looks like you could see Wade Hodges from Wauseon.
Yeah, Wauseon.
Yeah, he's 4th the last 2 years and 7th before that. He just made the finals at Ironman, I think.
Uh-huh.
Knocked off Brent Moore, and he could be seeing Zach Carson.
Carson from Lake.
Yeah.
He was runner-up last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
no, 2 years ago. Yeah, last year he finished 3rd, I think.
Yep, I think he only lost 1 match all year in the state semis.
Yep.
Yeah, and you're right. And he was runner-up to Dean Heil the year before. And then you got one other Michigan state champ, Foster Carmen, who could be at this weight class. So, another just brutal weight class, especially at the top. 152, you got Cade Kowalski, state champ, D1. He's the guy that won Zach Carson's weight class at state last year. You got Taleb Rahmani from
Marysville.
Yeah. Must be.
He's up a bunch of weights, I think.
He started at 6. I think he went to like 20 and then 42 and then 52. So he just keeps growing. And I heard he looks, huge for the weight. So just grew into the weight. 3-time state placer.
Yeah.
And I think he's wrestled Kowalski a couple times. I think he wrestled Carson like 3 times last year.
Yeah.
So, real tough kid. And then you got Josh Mossing, state finalist, could be at this weight. Kyle Kaminsky.
Yeah, Padua kid.
Yeah, Paddle kid. Did he win the district tournament last year?
Yeah, he beat Ryan Skenesny.
Yeah. 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we did both those matches. He pinned Skenesny at sectional, and then he beat him in a tough match at Alliance.
Yeah. Yeah, great matches. I think
Yeah. And then Skenesny beat him down in Columbus.
Yeah.
Which he had done two years in a row that happened.
And then you got like Andy Dobbin could be at this weight, CVCA. Another one of those teams, like you're saying, jumped over from, Medina.
Yeah.
And Brecksville keeps switching
Right.
teams.
Dobbin did just, he won a tournament. I'm trying to think of where CVCA was. But I know that he's a tournament winner this year at a decent tournament.
Okay.
Well, CVCA is there. Did you mention Ryan Bennett then?
Oh yeah, he's started at 38. Is he going? Do you think he'll be there?
I think he'll be at 32.
Okay.
That's what I've heard. But
yeah, that's what I've heard too. And
I didn't remember you mentioning his name.
I think it just because he was below like Furness and Shy and Olsen. It's just like
that too. You add him into that mix. And,
Yeah.
Well, he's a state caliber kid. Well, you know what hurt him is last year he didn't wrestle with district.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Is sometimes what happens in the wrestling game.
Yeah. Definitely. And then you could see another kid like that at 60 because Dayton Christian picked up a couple transfers. LeCure, who was state champ last year, and then Hoskins, the older one, who was a runner-up the year before. But I think he missed the end of last year. They're probably not going to be able to wrestle in this,
Right.
but Hoskins would probably be the favorite at 160. With him out, you got a lot of interesting matchups. You got a guy like Lane Hinkle from Mount Vernon, who's really doing well, state qualifier. Dakota Mays from Nelsonville, York is
He's tough.
yeah, multiple-time state place winner. A lot of good potential matchups at 60.
Yeah.
And then you got McNally.
From Lake.
Yeah, McNally from Lake at 70. There's some reports he might cut to 60. He's probably the favorite at either weight. If he's at 70, you probably see a matchup between him and Russell Miller. Miller's the guy that Lehman beat for 3rd and 4th at the state tournament last year. So Miami Trace, real tough kid. Matt Ludwig. I haven't seen anything.
He's a
from
Lake
him.
Catholic kid.
Yeah.
Right? I haven't seen anything from him this year. I know I have. I don't know if they're here, but I do have results from Crestwood and Lake Catholic wrestled earlier this year. I just don't know if that's one of the duels that I had before.
Yeah, and Ludwig, I think, was like 6th at the state maybe last year. Kept losing to Turner from Harvey.
Yeah,
Real
Alonzo
tough kid.
Turner.
I think he actually beat him at the beginning of the year at Solon, but then he lost to him at like sectional district and state like 3 weeks in a row.
Well, Ludwig would be a kid that, in a weight class that's not real deep, he could definitely sneak in there.
Yeah. Yeah, and then 182, you got a pretty strong favorite in Ben Darmstad.
Oh, yeah. Which is Elyria?
Yeah, from Elyria. He was state runner-up last year to Sparkman from Perry, and I think he just finished 3rd. 3rd at Ironman. If you finished 3rd at Ironman, it was a good weight, too. It's,
Yeah, he's another one of those kids who must have been taking his vitamins, because I think he started at a lightweight. Now he's up to 170.
Yeah. Yeah, he started at 120, jumped to 152, and now he's at 182.
82.
I think he's going to Cornell next year.
Yeah,
actually.
I did see that. Congratulations.
Yeah, great school, great wrestling team. So, of course, who knows how big he'll be? Might be a heavyweight, but we could see him as like a Tommy Rollins type, maybe.
Yeah.
But he looks like the pretty stern favorite at 182. 95, you could see a good finals matchup. You got Stencil.
Yeah.
From Oregon Clay.
Oregon Clay, yeah.
He was 2nd in the state, 2nd in Ironman last week. He probably you could see him face Jacob Worthington, who used to wrestle for Keystone.
Yeah.
but now is at Edison. I'm not really sure. It seemed like a lot of kids jumped teams this year.
Yeah, it's funny how some of them can do it and not get this. They must have done it before the season,
Or something,
you
yeah.
know. Well, if the parents move and it's a legitimate move, then they don't have to. No, but I'm confused with all these transfer rules
Yeah.
and stuff because you got open enrollment, you got the kids going to the private schools that. I'm glad I'm not on the administrative job where I'd have to figure that stuff out.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm pretty sure he has been wrestling. He is eligible, so it could be a good matchup between him and Stencil. Stencil was, I think, national champ this summer.
Yeah, he was at Fargo.
He might have won both, actually. He might have won Greco and freestyle. But
I know he won one of them.
yeah.
Greco, I know for sure.
And then you got Tannehill, another one of the Michigan kids, state placer, probably at this weight, maybe at 220 or something like that, but someone to keep an eye out for. 220 is kind of there's a lot of question marks at this weight. You got Marquise Copeland from Bedford.
Yeah.
He was a state qualifier last year. I haven't seen him in the lineup.
Yeah, I haven't either. And I've been looking. I had some, right here's a Bedford that scribbled out, and I don't think he was in the lineup. And that's against Crestwood this year.
Yeah, I think you're right. And another guy, another former PTC guy, actually transfer, Jarrett Cropper.
Yeah.
He
Cropper
is wrestling for Manchester now.
Yeah.
But I assume he's at 220. I think that's where they're reporting that he's wrestling. But the only result I saw was like heavyweight. So.
But I have some results. He beat Ben Higgins from Marlington at 220 at the Lake Duels. I think it was the Lake Duels. Either the Lake Duels or it might have been the Marlington Duels. But he is at 220 for Manchester.
And he could win this tournament. He was a state alternate as a freshman a couple years ago. Actually lost to Jenkins, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But he'll be a real good kid at this weight, especially how wide open it is. You got a kid, Cody Howard, Bloom Carroll, state alternate a couple years ago. Richards from Delta, I think, was a state placer last year. But just a lot of open. You got Asarco. Another kid to watch from that young Canfield team. He's a state alternate last year.
And he's a junior this year, right?
Yep. Yeah, he was a junior. He'll be a junior this year. I think he also just beat Higgins, I think, not too long ago.
Yeah.
Maybe at the either Marlington or Lake
Marlington,
Duels.
yeah. I saw that result also. Yeah, it's one. I think Canfield might have been at Marlington Duels.
Okay.
No, that was the Lake Duels.
Okay.
Yeah, guaranteed.
And then heavyweight, once again, second tournament. Looks like you got a really great heavyweight class. You got Kevin Vo from Elyria, just won. I think he's like 5th or 6th in the country. Only a sophomore, 3rd in the state as a freshman. Pretty crazy to see that out of heavyweight. Kid. Just won Ironman, stuck the kid in the finals. And then you got maybe his biggest competition for the state finals. You got Cale Bonner from Perrysburg. Couple times state placer. Vo pinned him once last year, but then I think he beat him by like 1 or in overtime another time. So you never know with those heavyweight matches. Sometimes it's exciting. Sometimes it's just
my son was a heavyweight in college, so the matches can be rolling around like crazy, or it could be 1-0.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you just get the dancing bears out there.
Yeah. Well, it depends on how they line up, how they match up. But
yeah.
I wouldn't want, the big guys wrestle a different style.
Yeah, definitely. A couple other good heavyweights. You got Chance Veller, state placer from Delta. Josh Berger from Aurora.
Yeah.
He's a state placer.
He just won. They were at a tournament last weekend, and he won, and it was a good tournament. Hudson.
Okay.
Bell was there.
That's right. Yeah. Placed ahead of Bell. Placed ahead of Robertson, and who else was there? I think Demand from
Bischoff was.
Bischoff I think was 3rd.
Yeah.
The Cuyahoga Falls kid was Samson.
Samson Demand.
Yeah, and I think that might have been who he beat in the finals. So that was a pretty good heavyweight class.
Yeah. That's a lot of good local kids that have paid their dues. A lot of them. I know that a lot of those names you just said I've been watching them since they were freshmen. So that they've been in the varsity lineups for years. and I think most of them are seniors this year. That's a good. That's those names you just said. Vo's good. They're definitely the cream of the crop there.
Absolutely.
I don't see, I don't see any of the other kids even being close to him. I don't, unless there's a Michigan kid with any, vote. There, sometimes people, a national caliber kid sometimes can just overpower a good state level kid.
Yeah, especially a heavyweight.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what he pretty much did at Ironman, and I know he placed at Fargo. Bo did, but I know I don't think he won it.
I think he might have placed it in both styles, but I don't remember his place. It's tough without a computer sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
But
we either got to have it wrote down or there's so many results
Yeah.
and kids that the older I get, the less my photographic memories work.
yeah.
But anybody else at the heavyweight class?
Just a few more guys to watch, or a couple more football guys. Jaquan Fisher from Toledo Central Catholic. He was 6th. I think he was a state semifinalist last year. And I think Toledo CC won the state title, maybe.
I think
Maybe
they did.
Beat Athens.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
so
they
he's
did.
probably coming fresh off of football. Colin Mang from Clyde, another state qualifier. Clyde usually has a good team, so he's probably still rounding back into shape. But once again, heavyweight looks like a really good weight class.
Real deep.
Yeah. And like we said, the team-wise, it's probably Brecksville, Delta, and then Dayton Christian's right there with them. We'll see Davison's probably gonna be real.
Yeah,
tough.
they'll have a tough team. It's hard to gauge the Michigan teams because we don't really know the depth of the lineups right now. And it's unless you go to the Amateur Wrestling News or Intermat and which you probably have to see the Ohio ranked teams, which while we're on the subject, well, let's go ahead and get this tournament done here team wise. I don't see any team. I agree with you. Brecksville's got to be the cream of the crop there. What, 3rd place at the Beast? Or no, they finished 7th, I think. They were.
Yeah, they were right there for a while.
Yeah.
Real tough weight, but I mean, they're as good as they are. Plus, they got the tournament at home, so that's always going to be in a close race. You got to favor the team that's wrestling at home, whether it's districts, whether it's a home tournament.
Right.
But
There's a good mix of the smaller schools at this tournament, though. Delta and Dayton Christian.
Yeah. It's nice to see some of those little teams that kind of built themselves into powerhouses. They can contend with just about any D1 or D2 school.
Yeah. Kind of. The school where the Fab Four went.
Yeah, Monroeville.
Monroeville, yeah. That was a tough team. Well, they won state championship with 4 kids.
Yeah. You don't see that too often.
No, but all state champs. Okay, well, that's going to conclude our tournament going over. I think we're going to do another show, a show like this on January 5th. We're going to do it on a Sunday. I don't think we're not going to come out live, but we'll tape it. It'll probably be out on Tuesday. We're going to more than likely, we're going to be at Jackson Milton on the 3rd. It's a good D3 tournament. It used to be Leonard Truck and Trailer Tournament. It's now a different sponsor. I'll have to get that. Merry Christmas to everyone. There's something else that was on the tip of my tongue. Let's see. Oh, the next show we do, I think Max and I will get into the Alliance District a little bit more. We went, we got the PTC tournament. I'm in Mogadore, Ohio. Suffield is where I live. I'm in the middle of the Portage Trail Conference, Akron. I'm right by Stark County with Uniontown Lake, and I got a good grasp of the teams around here. Max lives out in Poland, Ohio. I gotta say Ohio because he didn't fly here. And you got the EOWL, which that's a great wrestling league. That's what you wrestled in. The NBC, you probably get to see those teams more than I do here. Is there any other teams out that way that you're more in the Youngstown area, right?
Yeah, mostly in the Youngstown area, so I get to see. There's some good tournaments nearby, like the Hefner's always there. West Branch has the sectional tournament.
Yeah.
Like you said, the EOWL this year, actually at Crestview this year, at Ashland, or not, sorry, not
Columbiana.
Ashland, Columbiana Crestview. It's going to be at Columbiana Crestview this year. Should be a good tournament. New school should be an interesting site to have it.
Well, I know Crestview, United. There's there's several D3 schools from out that way. I know United local, Columbiana Crestview, and Columbiana, who I think might have just won the Waterloo D3 Classic last weekend. I'm not positive. I know that I saw where they had some places, but those are three teams out that way. D3 new wrestling programs, which is great for the sport to get more teams. But that's more out in your area, so maybe next time you can clue us in on what's going on that way. I know the Rootstown sectional is where those D3 schools are going to be going. And we'll kind of look at, maybe get a quick synopsis of what's happened. We got these tournaments we just went over that are going to be, and we're going to be, in the middle of, we're going to be in the middle of league tournament or league dual meets at that time, and then we do have the Alliance District coming up, which we're going to get into a little bit more. Maybe by then I might have some sectional rankings, and you update your district rankings weekly, or is it bi-weekly?
I try to get it every couple weeks.
Yeah, it's hard to do every week.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially when you're working.
Yeah.
That's been my problem. Usually I don't have a lot of time. Usually I'm not working real steady in the winter because I'm a contractor. But this year I've been pretty busy. Okay, folks, we're going to sign off now. I'm saying Merry Christmas to you all. And
Merry Christmas, guys. Look forward to seeing you again.
All right, have a good one. Good night.